Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner, and I'm pleased today to have as my guest Mr. Dennis Dudley, who is the new Director of Emergency Preparedness for Frederick County. So welcome, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm happy to have you here today. Certainly you're somebody I've known for a number of years. Can you share with our viewers a little bit about your background, your experience, and why you're interested in serving in this position?
Well, interested in serving the position, I've been a resident of Frederick County for 25 years. My background, work, I served in the Army. I was commissioned an infantry officer in 1981. I served in numerous positions. I was a platoon leader, executive officer, company commander, general staff officer, and also I had a secondary specialty of public affairs. So I was a public affairs officer. I moved to Frederick County in 1992 after I got out of the Army. I became a Frederick police officer in 1994, and I served with Frederick Police Department for 22 years, and I just retired in March. I served on the LEPC as a member, but between like 2006 and 2013, I was either the chairman or vice chairman of the LEPC during that period.
And just so people who are watching this know, the LEPC is our local emergency planning committee or commission, and so it's our organization where we bring all the different partners to the table to do that emergency preparedness strategy and planning. So now in your role as a Director of Emergency Preparedness for the county, what do you see as some of your goals and what are your job duties?
Well, the key is it's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. That's what emergency preparedness is responsible for. And asking the questions beforehand, before the emergencies, things that you might ask yourself in an emergency. Oh, it's a tornado, what do I do? Well, it's not just what the individual does, it's what the county does, what each county department's responsible to do, what the local municipalities are doing, what the state does, what the federal government does. And the position is a coordination position where we bring all those partners together and work as a team, similar to what we were doing with the local emergency planning committee, building relationships, building teams, and being prepared to work together on unusual circumstances.
Well, and we know training and planning does matter because when we have an emergency, to know who all the players are, what they do, and have people to jump into their roles is really important to having a good, well-coordinated, and timely response. Now in Frederick County, some of the biggest emergencies we have relate to weather events. Generally, if we have a blizzard or a major snowstorm, we set up our emergency operations center. But what other kinds of emergencies do we plan for besides weather events?
Well, weather-related events are another problem in Frederick County. Flooding is a big incident. Flooding is one of the bigger threats in Frederick County that people aren't aware of. So it's important to stay out of flooded areas, not drive through deep water events. Some of the other things we plan for, terrorism, there's natural events and there's man-caused events. So terrorist events, criminal events that can require an emergency response, sheltering, and a change in what is normal. The other types of things that can happen other than terrorism, man-made events, are chemical hazards, biological hazards, pandemics, working with the health department in preparing for pandemics and distribution of prophylactic drugs and other items.
Okay. So what kind of exercises do we have to make sure that all of these agencies are prepared and coordinated?
Well, there's a series of exercises we usually conduct. There's tabletops, and when you're doing a major exercise, the best way to start is with tabletops. So you can talk through the roles and what's going on and talk through plans, because sometimes what the law enforcement or fire believe is going to happen is different than what some of the government agencies believe are going to happen, or some of the businesses they're dealing with. So by doing a tabletop, you can work out the kinks to a plan before you go through an expense of doing a major drill.
Okay. We do try to do, I believe the LEPC tries to do one major drill a year and coordinate that with all the partners and look at what risks are out there and so they may do an actual physical drill. I know there's been some with a railroad accident, for instance. Now, I know you also have to coordinate with the municipalities because all of our municipalities need to have emergency plans as well. Now, the city of Frederick, where you worked as a police officer, is our bigger municipality, and they have a fair number of staff and a variety of agencies. But some of our smaller towns and cities have very few staff. They don't have a law enforcement agency. And so don't you have a greater role there with trying to plan for emergencies with those municipalities?
And we need to provide them a little more support than with the city. And again, it's partnership, working with them, identifying what their resources are and where they will need additional resources and support from the county and the state or federal in emergencies, and helping them with their planning and identifying hazards that they could deal with first. The key is to start at the local level when you're doing a response to an emergency. So when they reach the maximum they can support, then the county steps in, and when the county's resources are exhausted, then the state steps in and FEMA. But it's an organized, cooperative, layered response.
It's an orderly process. I do think it's been interesting over the past decade or so to recognize that our health department is now, can be, depending on the incidents, first responders, which is not really how the average person would think of that, of them, and that we also have to bring in partnerships like in our schools so that we know what's happening with a big population of people, 40,000 students in our schools every day, and how they would interact. So a lot of different partners to deal with. And of course, we also partner with Fort Detrick. So how often do you go out and meet with all of these different partners?
Well, but that's part of having the local emergency planning committee and other committees we have. The local emergency planning committee includes Fort Detrick, includes the school board, includes all the municipalities. The key is that it brings all the partners together and has that unifying discussion of who's doing what and whose role is being fulfilled and how to coordinate that so it's a unity of effort. We're not wasting resources by dual responding to things.
So one of the things we always tell people when they are preparing for an emergency that they do need to be prepared at home. They do need to be prepared at work. You should talk to your family, your children if they're in school, about, just generally what they should do to be prepared. So what tips do you have for the average citizen to plan for an emergency?
We follow the FEMA guidance, and that's a very good place to go. If you go to the FEMA.gov site, there's specific guidance there, but the key is to have a plan, and a plan that fits your family. So you identify what your family needs are. Part of that plan is a kit. You should be prepared for 72 hours because most response, it takes 72 hours for all the responses to kick in. So your kit would include a portable radio, 72 hours worth of non-perishable food, blankets, things that you would need for a 3-day or an immediate move. One of the things to consider in your plan is your specific family needs. If you have small children, there's specific things you'll need for them.
Right.
If you have pets, there's things you'll need for your pets. And things to consider, many shelters don't accept pets.
Right.
So you have to have a plan on what to do for your pets and how to move them with you in an evacuation. Because if you need to evacuate, your pets need to evacuate.
Yep. I think that was really highlighted in some of the major hurricanes we saw where we had pets that were out there without anybody to manage them. And some people didn't want to leave their home, even in the case of a flood, because they wanted to stay with their pets. So having a plan for the pets is really very important, and that is part of what we planned for.
And we've discussed that at length in the county in the past, because many people, if they find out they can't go into a shelter because their pets aren't accepted, they will not go there.
Right.
Because they're part of their family also. So there needs to be a plan to help work with those.
Well, I think it's important for people to be prepared and be ready to shelter in place at home or at work if that's what the direction is from the government leaderships. And I tell people the most important thing that I think they need to have is a radio that's battery operated, so that they can listen to the local radio station and get the news and get that direction and know what they have to do. I've always told members of my family they need to also have that emergency kit in their cars and their vehicles, so that if they can't go home or they need to go someplace other than home, that they have a something that will sustain them in their car, like a jug of water, and maybe some basic food and other supplies, a blanket. And so I think that's very important for us to recognize that you may not always be at home when you have an incident, and you need to talk to every member of your family about it. Now, one of the things that the county has tried to do to make people more aware of pending emergencies is to send out alerts. And so can you talk about the value of alerts and how people can sign up for them?
And that's an important part of your plan. How are you going to get information? And radios is one way, but the other way is through the alert system. And Frederick County has an alert system that's managed through Everbridge platform. But if you go on the county's website, you can sign up for emergency alerts. You go in, you can put in your name, your address, and now some people are concerned about their address. You can put in a location. And what that location does, it tells you what alerts you're going to get. So if you're worried about your neighborhood, you could put in a street, and that will center those alerts on your street. So if there's something specific to your neighborhood, you can receive those alerts. If your children are in school, you can put in your children's school as a location. You can put in multiple locations for where you feel to need alerts from. And the municipalities participate in this program, so you can sign up for alerts from the city of Frederick, Emmitsburg, Middletown, that are specific to your community.
So, well, I do want to encourage people to sign up for alerts. It is a good way to find out what's happening. You can get that email, and you can get it on your phone, and you can know about what's happening no matter where you are. And that's really, I think, modern day technology helps us with that, and people should sign up to use it. So our time is almost up. So what message would you like to give to our viewing audience about emergency preparedness?
The key, have a plan, have a communication plan. So if there's an emergency, where are you going to meet? If you're not at home and your home's already been evacuated, have a location away from your home. A good thing to have also is a relative in another location. So if you have a relative in another state, another county, you have everybody call that relative when you're okay and tell them where you're at. It's a good way to keep your communication plan open. Yep. Another recommendation in emergencies, use texting when the phones don't work, because 9 times out of 10 in an emergency, your text will work when your telephone won't.
Yeah, because the phone lines may be too busy. So I'm not quite sure why the technology allows a text to work when the phones are busy, but it certainly seems to function that way. So well, thank you for joining me today for this show, and I really wish you well in your new job as the Director of Emergency Preparedness, and I look forward to working with you because it is a fundamental responsibility of county government to keep our citizens safe. So thank you for joining the show today. I hope you learned a little bit about what's happening in emergency preparedness in Frederick County. I encourage you to sign up to get those alerts. You can go to the county webpage, which is on the screen, and to see how you can do that and make sure your family is prepared. Thank you for joining us.